Judge Robert Harrison adjusted his tie in front of the mirror in his office on the 23rd floor of the Cuyahoga County Courthouse. Outside the window stretched Cleveland, a city he knew like the back of his hand. 30 years of legal practice, the last 12 of which were spent on the bench, had taught him to read this city like an open book. Every street, every neighborhood told its own story of power, money, and compromise. At 54, Harrison looked exactly how a respected judge should look. Gray temples, a tailored suit, confident posture. His decisions in high-profile cases were regularly featured in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and his colleagues at the law firm treated him with the respect he deserved. But reputation in a big city is a fragile thing, especially when a respectable facade hides secrets that can destroy a life in a single night. Harrison glanced at his watch. It was 6:30 in the evening. His secretary had long since gone home, and the corridors of the courthouse were empty. It was time for meetings that should not appear on his official schedule. He took his phone out of his desk drawer, not his work phone, but one that only a select few knew about. A message appeared on the screen. "Today at 8, usual place." Samantha Reigns sat in the bar of the Royal Plaza Hotel and watched the entrance. At 28, she had learned to be invisible in a crowd when she needed to be and to attract attention when her job required it. Today, she had chosen something in between. An elegant black dress, understated jewelry, and makeup that emphasized her natural beauty. Anyone who saw her would think she was a successful businesswoman waiting for a business partner. In a sense, that was true. Samantha led a double life with such skill that she sometimes forgot where one role ended and the other began. During the day, she worked at a small PR agency in the city center, managing the reputations of local politicians and business people. In the evenings, she provided services of a more personal nature to the same people or their colleagues. The irony of the situation did not escape her. She was simultaneously creating and destroying images. Cleveland was the perfect city for such a business. It was large enough to blend into the crowd, but compact enough for all the influential people to know each other. Politicians, judges, prosecutors, big businessmen, they all moved in the same circles, frequented the same restaurants, and belonged to the same country clubs. And they all needed discretion, which Samantha knew how to provide better than anyone else. She had met Judge Harrison 6 months earlier at a charity event for a children's shelter. At the time, she was accompanying one of the city's developers, a large, rough-looking man who looked more like a dock worker than a millionaire. Harrison was sitting at a nearby table with his wife, a thin woman with a sour expression who clearly would have preferred to spend the evening at home. Samantha noticed the judge casting several interested glances in her direction. Their first conversation took place at the bar. Harrison approached her when her companion went to the restroom. "Excuse me for being so forward, but do you work in public relations?" he asked, handing her his business card. Samantha smiled. "Among other things, yes. Aren't you Judge Harrison who handed down the verdict in the City Hall corruption case last week?" "Guilty as charged," he replied with a slight smile. That was how they met. At first, they had business meetings in his office, ostensibly to consult on public opinion issues. Then came lunches in secluded restaurants, and finally, regular meetings in expensive hotel rooms. Harrison was not like most of her clients. He didn't flaunt his wealth or try to impress her with expensive gifts. Instead, he talked to her as an equal, took an interest in her opinion, and told her about the difficulties of being a judge. Sometimes, Samantha caught herself thinking that their relationship could have been genuine if circumstances had been different. But circumstances were what they were, and tonight, everything was about to change. In another part of town, in a small apartment in the Tremort neighborhood, Marcus Raines was trying to concentrate on the documents spread out on the kitchen table. At 32, he looked older than his age. Traces of sleepless nights under his eyes, a nervous twitch in his hands that he tried to hide by clenching his fists. 2 years ago, Marcus was a promising lawyer at one of Cleveland's prestigious firms. He specialized in corporate law and had a reputation as a workaholic and perfectionist. He had a beautiful fiancée, plans for the future, and a firm belief that life would turn out exactly the way he wanted it to. Everything fell apart after a car accident. It wasn't his fault. A drunk driver crashed into him at an intersection. Broken ribs, a damaged spine, months of rehabilitation. The doctors prescribed painkillers, first in the hospital, then at home. Temporarily until you recover completely, they said. Full recovery never came. The pain became chronic, and pills were the only way he could function. At first, he took them strictly as prescribed, then began to increase the dose. His fiancée left when she realized that the problem was more serious than it seemed. His partners at the firm asked him to take an indefinite leave of absence after he failed to complete several important projects. Samantha was the only person who didn't turn her back on him. She helped him financially when he couldn't find a job, listened to his complaints, and tried to convince him to seek treatment. Marcus knew what his sister did for a living, but he preferred not to think about it. Everyone has their own way of surviving in the big city. This morning, Samantha called him and asked to meet. She said she had a proposal that could solve their problems once and for all. There was an unusual tension in her voice that made Marcus put everything else on hold. "I found a way out of this mess," she said when they met at a cafe near his house. "But I need your help, your knowledge of the law." "What are you talking about?" he asked, struggling to concentrate on the conversation. His morning dose wasn't working as well as usual. "I have information, very serious information about a very influential man, serious enough to set us up for years." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "Samantha, don't tell me you're going to blackmail someone." "I'm going to seek justice," she replied firmly. "This man is using his position for personal gain. He covers for criminals for money, dispenses justice depending on the size of the bribe. And I keep quiet and pretend I don't know about it. Even if that's true, blackmail is a crime, a serious crime. And what he's doing isn't a crime?" Samantha leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Marcus, I have records, photographs, documents, enough to put him away for years. But instead, I'm going to offer him a deal. He pays us, we keep quiet and leave town. It's simple." Marcus shook his head. Nothing is simple when influential people are involved. They don't just pay and forget. They get rid of problems in more radical ways. Not in this case. This man can't afford a scandal. He has too much to lose. Now, sitting in his kitchen, Marcus tried to figure out if he had done the right thing by agreeing to help his sister. The documents in front of him left no doubt that Judge Harrison was indeed corrupt. Offshore bank accounts, suspicious rulings, ties to organized crime, it all added up to a clear picture. But Marcus knew the law well enough to understand that blackmail was blackmail, no matter how dirty the victim was. And he knew the Cleveland criminal underworld well enough to understand that people killed for much less money than Samantha was talking about. The phone rang, making him jump. His sister's name lit up on the screen. "Is everything ready?" she asked without preamble. "I have the documents, but Samantha, I still think this is a bad idea." "It's too late to think about that. I'm meeting him in an hour. Keep your phone on." "Wait," Marcus began, but she had already hung up. In the courthouse, Detective Mindy Mitchell was finishing up paperwork on an armed robbery case. At 41, she was one of the most experienced investigators in the homicide division. 20 years on the force had taught her not to trust appearances and always look for hidden motives. Cleveland was a city of contrasts, and Mindy had seen all sides of it. Prestigious neighborhoods with mansions behind high fences, where crimes were committed with white gloves. Industrial neighborhoods where violence was part of everyday life. The business district, where intrigues capable of destroying dozens of lives played out behind the mirrored facades of skyscrapers. She knew Judge Harrison from work. Their paths had crossed in the courtroom when she testified in murder cases. A professional relationship, nothing more. Harrison seemed like a competent judge, although Mindy was sometimes surprised by some of his decisions. Sentences that were too lenient for hardened criminals, too harsh for petty offenders. But judicial discretion was a subjective matter, and it was not her place to judge him. Tonight, she planned to finish her reports and go home to her husband and 2 children. A quiet evening, a family dinner, helping her son with his math homework. Simple pleasures that helped her not think about what she saw at work. Mindy had no idea that in a few hours, her plans would change dramatically, and she would be investigating a case that would turn her view of the city, where she had served her entire life, upside down. James Collins stood at the window of his office in the district attorney's office and watched the evening traffic on the streets of Cleveland. At 38, he was the youngest assistant district attorney in the county's history, and many predicted a bright political future for him. Ambitious, intelligent, charming, he had all the qualities necessary for a career in high politics. But politics in Cleveland, as everywhere else, required compromise, and Collins learned how to make them. Not every case was worth taking to court. Not every criminal deserved the maximum punishment. Not every witness was trustworthy. The system did not work as it was written in law books, and success depended on the ability to adapt to reality. His relationship with Judge Harrison began as a normal professional collaboration. Collins was the prosecutor in cases that Harrison heard. Gradually, closer ties developed between them. They had lunch together, met informally, and exchanged information. Harrison was an experienced judge, and Collins was a promising prosecutor. It made sense to help each other. Collins found it difficult to say exactly when their cooperation crossed the line. It happened gradually, imperceptibly. At first, information about the prosecution's position was passed on to the defense through Harrison. Then some evidence was lost or deemed inadmissible. Then envelopes of cash began to appear, which Harrison passed on from grateful citizens. Collins realized he had gone too far to stop. The corruption network he had become part of included more than just the two of them. Lawyers, businessmen, even some police officers. All were bound by mutual obligations and shared secrets. Leaving this system meant not only losing his career but also risking his life. The phone on the table rang. Harrison. "James, I need to see you. Today. Urgent." "What's going on?" "Not over the phone. Come to the office in half an hour." Collins felt a familiar sense of unease in his stomach. Over the years working in the corruption scheme, he had learned to recognize danger in the tone of a voice, in facial expressions, in small details of behavior. And now all his instincts were screaming that something serious had happened. The Royal Plaza Hotel was located in the heart of Cleveland's business district. Its rooms on the upper floors cost a fortune, but they offered complete privacy. That was why Samantha chose it for meetings with her most important clients. Today, she was sitting in room 2847, nervously flipping through the pages of documents spread out on the table by the window. Photographs of bank documents, recordings of telephone conversations, copies of court decisions. Everything that had turned her from a simple escort girl into the holder of information worth millions of dollars. It all started by accident. 3 months ago, Harrison fell asleep after their meeting and his phone kept ringing. Samantha wanted to wake him up, but she saw the name of the developer she had met at the charity event on the screen. Curiosity got the better of her, and she answered the call. "Robert, the Moretti case is tomorrow. Is everything ready on your end?" She heard the familiar gruff voice say. Samantha quickly got her bearings. "Yes, the decision has already been written. The embezzlement charge will be reclassified as an administrative offense." "Excellent. The money will be transferred to the usual account after the verdict is announced." From then on, Samantha became more careful. She installed a call recording app on her phone and started taking photos of the documents Harrison sometimes brought to the hotel. Gradually, she pieced together a complete picture of the corruption scheme, at the center of which was a respected judge. At 8 o'clock in the evening, there was a knock at the door. Samantha opened it and let Harrison in. He looked worried. "Is something wrong?" she asked, feigning concern as usual. "James said there are rumors at the prosecutor's office about a possible investigation of judges," Harrison replied as he walked into the room. "Maybe we should stop meeting for a while." Samantha locked the door. "Robert, we need to talk, seriously." Something in her tone made him turn around. Harrison's gaze fell on the documents spread out on the table. "What's that?" he asked, coming closer. "This is your life, Robert. Your whole secret life." Samantha picked up one of the photos. "A bank account in the Cayman Islands. $3.5 million. I wonder how a judge with an average salary managed to accumulate such a sum." Harrison's face turned pale. "Where did you get this?" "You left the documents here a month ago. Then I started watching you more closely." She showed him another photograph. The Vittorio Rossini case, charged with money laundering. By the law, he should have gotten 20 years. He got 3 years probation. The next day, $500,000 was deposited into your account. Harrison slumped into a chair. What do you want? $2 million. Cash. And my brother and I will disappear from Cleveland forever. $2 million? You're out of your mind. I'm a realist, Samantha replied calmly. You have the money. I have information that will send you to prison for life. It's simple math. Harrison covered his face with his hands. You don't understand what you're getting yourself into. This isn't just a bribe, it's a whole system. If it collapses, dozens of people will suffer. I don't care about other people. All I care about is money. What if I refuse? Samantha took out the voice recorder and pressed play. Harrison's voice came from the speaker. James, we need to lose a key piece of evidence in the Carlos Mendez case. Collins knows what to do. I have 23 recordings like this, she said, turning off the device. Plus documents, plus photos of your meetings with people you later defended in court. Everything has been copied and is in a safe place. At that moment, James Collins was pacing nervously in his office. Harrison was supposed to have arrived half an hour ago, but he still hadn't shown up. Collins sensed that something was wrong. Over the years of working in a corrupt scheme, he had learned to trust his instincts. His phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Mr. Collins, we need to meet. I have information that will interest you. It concerns Judge Harrison. Collins felt a cold sweat break out on his back. Someone knew about their connection. Someone brave enough to make direct contact. He dialed Harrison's number, but there was no answer. He tried again, then a third time, with the same result. Marcus Raines sat in his car across from the Royal Plaza Hotel and watched the entrance. Samantha had asked him to stay nearby, just in case, though she hadn't really explained what that meant. All he knew was that at 9 o'clock he was to go up to room 2847 if his sister hadn't come out by then. The drugs were dulling his ability to think logically, but his experience as a lawyer told him that the situation was not developing in the best way. Blackmail was a dangerous game, especially when the victim was someone with connections like Judge Harrison. Marcus took a bottle of pills from the glove compartment and swallowed 2 capsules with water from a plastic bottle. The pain in his back was getting worse from sitting in the car for so long, and the tension was only making things worse. His phone rang. Samantha. How's it going? He asked. Harder than expected. He's trying to bargain. He's offering $500,000. Maybe we should take it. It's still good money. No. Either $2 million or all the documents go to the prosecutor's office tomorrow morning. Samantha, be careful. People who are cornered are capable of desperate acts. I've got it under control. But Marcus heard the tension in her voice. His sister had always been confident, but now something was wrong. In his hotel room, Harrison got up from his chair and went to the window. Below, streams of cars moved through the streets. Advertising signs burned brightly, and life in the big city continued as usual. He wanted to be part of that normal life, not sitting in a hotel room haggling with a woman who could destroy everything he had built over decades. I need time, he said without turning around. You have time, until noon tomorrow. After that, copies of all the materials will be sent to the FBI, the state prosecutor's office, and the newspapers. I can't get $2 million overnight. You can't just withdraw that kind of money from a bank account. That's your problem. You found ways to get money before. Harrison turned to her. She saw something in his eyes that made her instinctively take a step back. You're playing with fire, Samantha. The people I deal with don't forgive betrayal. This isn't betrayal. It's business. To them, it's the same thing. Samantha walked over to the desk and gathered the documents into a folder. Then you'd better find a way to convince them that silence is worth $2 million. Harrison headed for the door, but stopped, his hand on the handle. What will happen to us? To our relationship? What relationship? Samantha asked, surprised. Robert, we were never friends. I provided a service. You paid for it. Now I'm providing another service. Silence. After he left, Samantha called her brother. Did he agree? Marcus asked. He has no choice. The money will be with us by noon tomorrow. And if it's not, then tomorrow afternoon all of Cleveland will know what their respected judge is really like. Harrison left the hotel and got into his car. His hands were shaking so badly that he missed the ignition several times as he tried to insert the key. 30 years of impeccable reputation, 12 years on the bench. All of it was crumbling before his eyes because of a young woman he considered a common prostitute. He took out his phone and dialed Collins's number. "James, I need help. Serious help. What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. Meet me at your office in half an hour." Detective Mindy Mitchell managed to finish her reports ahead of schedule. She was packing up, looking forward to a quiet evening at home, when the phone rang. "Homicide, Detective Mitchell." "Mindy, this is Thomas from Dispatch. A woman has come in reporting a possible crime. She says she has information about corruption in the judicial system." "That's not our beat. Pass it on to the anti-corruption unit. She insists on talking to you. She says it's a matter of life and death." Mindy sighed. "What's her name?" "Samantha Reigns. She says her life is in danger." "Okay, send her in." 10 minutes later, an attractive woman in her 30s entered Mindy's office. Despite her expensive clothes and flawless makeup, the detective noticed signs of severe stress. Trembling hands, darting eyes, nervous lip biting. "Detective Mitchell, thank you for agreeing to see me. Have a seat. What kind of danger are you talking about?" Samantha sat down opposite her and clutched her purse. "I provide services to wealthy men. One of my clients is Judge Robert Harrison." Mindy raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "He takes bribes. I've seen the documents, heard the conversations. I have proof." "And what did you do with that information?" Samantha paused, clearly weighing how much of the truth she could reveal. "I tried to negotiate with him. I offered him money to keep quiet." "You blackmailed a federal judge?" "I was trying to protect myself. He found out what I knew about his dealings. He threatened me tonight." Mindy leaned back in her chair. "Miss Reigns, blackmail is also a crime. A serious crime." "I know, but I'm afraid. Harrison has connections to some very dangerous people, if he decides I'm a threat." "Do you have proof?" "Some of it. The rest is hidden in a safe place." Mindy picked up her notebook. "Tell me more about your allegations against Judge Harrison." James Collins' office at the district attorney's office had never seemed so small. Harrison paced the room like a caged animal, while Collins sat at his desk trying to make sense of what he had heard. "Repeat that," Collins said, massaging his temples. "She recorded our conversations for months. She has photos of bank documents, recordings of phone calls, even pictures of our meetings with clients." Harrison stopped at the window, staring at the lights of Cleveland at night. "She knows everything, James. Absolutely everything." "How long has this been going on?" 3 months, according to her. The Moretti case. Collins remembered the case. A major developer had been accused of embezzling public funds during the construction of public housing. The evidence was ironclad, but somehow key documents disappeared from the case file, and witnesses changed their testimony. Moretti received a suspended sentence instead of 15 years in prison. $2 million, Collins repeated. "Do you have that kind of money?" "Not in cash, and not the kind you can quickly convert without attracting attention." "And if we don't pay?" "Tomorrow at noon, copies of all the materials will go to the FBI, the state prosecutor's office, and the press." Harrison turned to Collins. "We'll both get life in prison, and the people we worked with won't wait for trial." Collins understood what Harrison was talking about. Over the years of corruption, they had worked with more than just white-collar criminals. Some of their clients solved problems with more radical methods. "There's another option," Collins said slowly. "What is it?" "Get rid of the source of the problem." Harrison froze. "You're suggesting we kill her?" "I'm suggesting we solve the problem, once and for all. James, we're corrupt officials, not murderers." "What's the difference? We're already in deep shit. One more crime won't make things any worse." Harrison sat down in the chair opposite Collins's desk. "She has a brother, Marcus Reigns. He has all the copies of the files. Even if something happens to her, it won't solve the problem. Then we have to solve both problems." Silence hung in the office. An ambulance drove by outside with its siren blaring. a reminder that real tragedies were happening somewhere in the city. "I can't," Harrison finally said. "I can't kill people." "Then find the money." At that moment, Samantha was sitting in a cafe near the police station, thinking about her conversation with Detective Mitchell. Going to the police was a risky move, but she hoped to establish an alibi in case Harrison decided to take extreme measures. She presented the situation as if she were a victim of circumstances. She had accidentally learned about the corruption and tried to negotiate with the judge peacefully, but he had threatened her. Now she feared for her life and was asking the police for protection. Detective Mitchell looked skeptical, but wrote down every word. Samantha gave her a flash drive with copies of some documents, not the most compromising, but enough to confirm the seriousness of the allegations. "If anything happens to me, you'll know who to look for," she said goodbye. Now, sitting in a cafe, Samantha realized that the point of no return had been passed. Tomorrow morning, she would either be a millionaire or her life would change dramatically. There was no third option. Marcus was still sitting in his car across from the hotel. The drugs were wearing off, and reality was becoming increasingly grim. He tried to convince himself that his sister's plan would work, but his experience as a lawyer told him otherwise. People of Judge Harrison's caliber didn't become corrupt on their own. They were backed by a system that had its own methods of self-defense, and those methods were rarely limited to monetary negotiations. His phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Mr. Reigns, we need to talk. This concerns your sister's safety." Marcus felt his heart race. Someone knew about their plan. Someone well-informed enough to find his phone number. He dialed Samantha's number. "Samantha, someone knows about our plans. I just got a message." "What message?" "Someone wants to meet. They're talking about your safety." "Don't answer. It's a scare tactic." "What if it's not? What if Harrison really is planning something bad?" "Then tomorrow all the documents will be public, and he won't care about revenge." But Marcus heard uncertainty in his sister's voice. For the first time ever, she was questioning the rightness of her actions. Detective Mindy Mitchell sat at her kitchen table studying the materials Samantha Reigns had given her. Even the incomplete documents painted a disturbing picture of corruption in the Cleveland court system. Her husband was cooking dinner, the kids were doing their homework, a typical family evening. But Mindy couldn't focus on the domestic atmosphere. Her experience told her that Samantha Reigns' story could end in tragedy. "Something serious?" her husband asked, noticing her preoccupation. "Possibly. A woman claims that Judge Harrison is taking bribes. She has evidence." "Harrison? The one who handled the banker's murder case last year?" "That's the one. He always seemed like a decent man. That's the ones who turn out to be the most dangerous." Mindy decided to talk to her boss in the morning. The case required a cautious approach. Accusations against a federal judge could not be made without solid evidence. In his mansion in an upscale neighborhood of Cleveland, Judge Harrison sat in his study trying to find a way out of the situation. His wife had long since gone to bed, and the house was silent. Only the ticking of an old clock reminded him that time was ticking away toward a fateful deadline: $2 million. The amount that could save his reputation and freedom, but which was impossible to obtain overnight. His offshore accounts contained sufficient funds, but any large transaction would attract the attention of the tax authorities. He could turn to the people he had served over the years. Many of them owed him significant sums, but that would mean revealing his vulnerability, and in their world, weakness quickly turned into a death sentence. Harrison took the gun he had bought years ago for self-defense out of the safe, but had never used. The cold metal felt strangely real in his hand after months of abstract fear. He could go to the hotel and try to negotiate with Samantha. Perhaps she would agree to a smaller amount, or a payment plan, or the phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Collins. "Robert, I've found a solution." "What is it?" "I have a friend. He's good at solving delicate problems." "I told you I don't want to kill anyone." "Who's talking about murder? An accident, a drug overdose, suicide out of desperation. Things like that happen to people in her line of work." Harrison closed his eyes. "How much will it cost?" $100,000, cash, instead of $2 million. "What about her brother?" "That's a separate service. Another 50,000. There was a long silence. A late bus drove past the window, its headlights illuminating the office for a second. "All right," Harrison finally said. "Make the arrangements." After his conversation with Collins, Harrison opened his home safe and took out bundles of cash. $150,000 was his emergency fund. He never thought that an emergency would involve a contract killing. Samantha returned to her apartment at midnight. She lived in a modern complex in the city center, not too luxurious, but comfortable enough to maintain the image of a successful woman. The apartment greeted her with its usual silence. Samantha went into the bedroom, changed into her nightclothes, and sat down by the window with a cup of tea. Tomorrow, her life would change forever. Either she would get the money and be able to start a new life far away from Cleveland, or Judge Harrison would end up behind bars, and she would become a witness in the most high-profile corruption case in the city's history. Either way, Samantha Reigns would never be the same again. She took out her phone and texted Marcus, "Meet me at the usual cafe tomorrow at 11. Bring all the copies of the documents. By this afternoon, we'll either be millionaires or television news stars." The reply came almost immediately. "I still think this is a bad idea, but I'm with you," Samantha smiled. Despite all her problems, Marcus was the only person she could rely on. Collins sat in his car in an empty parking lot in an industrial area and waited. At midnight, a man in a dark jacket approached him. Short, unremarkable, the kind of person you would easily forget after meeting him. "Do you have the money?" the man asked without preamble. 50,000 now. The rest after the job is done." "Who's the target?" "A woman, Samantha Reigns, 28 years old. Tomorrow afternoon she'll be at the Royal Plaza Hotel, room 2847. How should it look? An accident or suicide? It's important that there be no connection to us." The man nodded, took the envelope with the money, and disappeared into the darkness as quietly as he had appeared. Collins started the car and drove home. For the first time in months, he felt something like relief. Tomorrow, the problem would be solved, and life would return to normal. He didn't know that Detective Mindy Mitchell had already requested an official review of Judge Harrison, and that by morning their corruption scheme would be under the scrutiny of federal agents. In his apartment, Marcus couldn't sleep. The drugs dulled the physical pain, but they couldn't take away his anxiety. Something told him that tomorrow would bring not money and freedom, but a tragedy that would change their lives forever. He got out of bed and went to the window. Cleveland was asleep, but the lights in the skyscrapers indicated that someone else was unable to find peace that night. Marcus had no idea that in one of those illuminated windows, a hitman was studying a photograph of his sister. The fateful morning was drawing near. The morning of October 23rd began as usual for Cleveland. Gray skies, drizzling rain, and streams of cars rushing about their business. But for some people, this day would be the last of their lives. Samantha woke up at 7 in the morning after a restless night. Her dreams had been disturbing. She saw herself in a courtroom where Judge Harrison was reading her sentence, and then the scene changed, and she was sitting on the bench, deciding the fate of strangers. She took a shower and carefully chose her outfit. Today it was important to look confident and professional. A black business suit, minimal jewelry, a strict hairstyle. The image of a woman in control. At 10:30, Samantha met Marcus at the Espresso Cafe on Euclid Avenue. Her brother looked unwell, pale, nervous, his hands shaking. She knew that his morning dose of drugs hadn't taken full effect yet. "Do you have the documents?" she asked, sitting down opposite him. Marcus nodded and slid a leather folder toward her. "All the copies are here. The originals are in the safe deposit box as you requested." "Excellent!" Samantha quickly glanced through the contents. "If Harrison brings the money, we leave town immediately. I already have tickets for the evening flight to Miami. And if he doesn't? Then at 1 o'clock, I'll hand this over to the journalists at the Cleveland Plain Dealer. By evening, the story will be on the front pages." Marcus shook his head. "Samantha, I've been thinking about this all night. Maybe we should just leave, right now. We have some money. We can start a new life somewhere else." "After everything he did to me? After all the humiliation?" Samantha's voice was filled with anger. "No, Marcus, he'll pay. Literally or figuratively." At that moment, Detective Mindy Mitchell was sitting in the office of her boss, Captain David Stone, reporting on Samantha Reigns' statement. "The testimony is serious," Stone said, studying the documents, "but the source is questionable, an escort girl who's involved in blackmail. Nevertheless, the evidence looks convincing. Bank documents, wiretap recordings, all of that could be fabricated or obtained illegally. Captain, the woman claims her life is in danger. If anything happens to her, then we'll have a murder case, not a corruption case." Stone closed the file. "Keep an eye on the situation. If anything happens to Reigns, we'll take Harrison in immediately." Mindy left the office with an uneasy feeling. 20 years on the force had taught her to recognize the signs of impending tragedy, and all the signs pointed to Samantha Reigns' story ending badly. At noon, Samantha went up to room 2847 at the Royal Plaza Hotel. It was the same room where her relationship with Judge Harrison had begun, and where she intended to end it, either by getting the money or by destroying his life once and for all. She laid out the last documents on the table, the most compromising notes and photographs. If Harrison still had any doubts about the seriousness of her intentions, these materials should convince him once and for all. At 1 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Samantha opened it, expecting to see the judge, but standing in the hallway was an unfamiliar man, short, unremarkable, dressed in a hotel uniform. "Miss Reigns? I'm with hotel security. There's been a complaint about noise coming from your room." "What noise? I'm here alone and I'm being quiet." "May I come in and check?" Something in his gaze made Samantha wary, but it would have been strange to refuse a hotel employee. She stepped aside and let him into the room. The man quickly scanned the room, lingering on the documents spread out on the table. "Sorry for the trouble," he said, heading for the door. "Looks like it was a false alarm." But instead of leaving, he spun around. A knife flashed in his hand. "What are you doing?" Samantha began, but her words were cut off when the blade pierced her ribs. The pain was unbearable. Samantha tried to scream, but only a wheeze escaped her throat. The killer caught her falling body and carefully laid her on the bed. "Nothing personal," he whispered, looking into her fading eyes. "Just business." Samantha tried to say something, but her strength was leaving her. The last thing she saw was the killer's face, watching her agony with indifference. Death came 3 minutes later. The killer methodically searched the room, gathering all the documents and records. He professionally examined the body, making sure the wound looked like Samantha had inflicted it herself in a fit of despair. Next to the bed, he left a note written in her handwriting. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I can't live with this burden anymore." The forgery was skillful. The killer had studied samples of Samantha's handwriting from documents Collins had given him. At 1:30, he left the hotel through a service exit, taking all the incriminating material with him. Marcus had been calling his sister for half an hour, but she didn't answer. His anxiety grew with every passing minute. Samantha was always punctual and never ignored his calls, especially on such an important day. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he couldn't take it anymore and drove to the Royal Plaza Hotel. The receptionist at the front desk initially refused to provide information about the guests, but Marcus insisted, explaining that his sister was not answering her phone and he was worried about her health. "All right," the receptionist finally agreed, "but only if you are accompanied by security." They went up to the 28th floor. The security guard knocked on the door of room 2847. "Miss Reigns, your brother is worried about you." There was no answer. The security guard used a MasterCard to open the door. Samantha was lying on the bed in a pool of blood. A bloody knife lay next to her, and a note was on the bedside table. Marcus screamed so loud that his cry was heard on the neighboring floors. Detective Mindy Mitchell received a call at 2:30. "Suicide at the Royal Plaza Hotel," the dispatcher said. "The victim is Samantha Reigns." Mindy felt her heart sink. It was the same woman who had asked for protection yesterday. When she arrived at the scene, the hotel room was already cordoned off. Marcus Reigns was sitting in the hallway under the watchful eye of a patrol officer, rocking back and forth and muttering to himself. Mindy examined the body. At first glance, it looked like suicide. A knife in the chest, a suicide note, no signs of a struggle. But her experience told her that something was wrong. "Where are the documents?" she asked the forensic technician. "What documents?" She said she had compromising material on Judge Harrison. Bank documents, wiretap recordings. "There are only the victim's personal belongings here, no documents." Mindy approached Marcus. "Mr. Reigns, I need to talk to you." Marcus looked up at her, his eyes red from crying. "They killed her. I know they did." "Who they?" "Harrison. His people. She knew too much." "Do you have any proof?" "There was. Samantha had all the proof. Where is it? Where are the documents?" Mindy realized that this was not a suicide, but a carefully planned murder, but proving it would not be easy. At that moment, Judge Harrison sat in his office pretending to work on court documents. When Collins called to tell him that the problem had been taken care of, he felt both relief and nausea. "How does it look?" he asked. "Suicide. Desperate. Everything's clean." "The documents?" "Destroyed. No one will ever see them again." Harrison hung up and tried to concentrate on his work. An hour later, there was a knock at his door. "Come in." Detective Mindy Mitchell appeared in the doorway. "Judge Harrison, I'm Detective Mitchell from the Homicide Division. I need to ask you a few questions about Samantha Reigns." Harrison's face didn't flinch. "Of course, Detective. How can I help you?" "When was the last time you saw Miss Reigns?" "I'm not sure I know that woman." "She claimed you had a personal relationship." "Detective, I'm a married man and a federal judge. Such allegations are extremely serious." "Yes, they are serious, especially considering she is dead." Harrison feigned surprise. "Dead? What happened?" "Officially, it's suicide, but I think it's murder." "And what makes you think that?" "Yesterday, Miss Reigns came to me with a statement. She said you were taking bribes and that her life was in danger." "Detective, I understand you're doing your job, but the accusations of a mentally unstable woman, she had proof, documents, records. Where are they now?" "Gone. How convenient, isn't it?" "Ow." Mindy stood up and headed for the door. "Judge Harrison, this investigation is just beginning. Sooner or later, the truth will come out." After she left, Harrison called Collins. "Did they come to see you too?" "No, but they're on their way. What did she say?" "Nothing. Complete denial." "Stick to that line. They have no evidence." But both knew that Samantha's murder was only the beginning of their problems. A week had passed since Samantha Reigns' death. Officially, the case had been closed as a suicide, but Detective Mindy Mitchell continued to dig. She worked in her spare time, using personal connections and unofficial channels. The first breakthrough came by accident. Mindy was reviewing surveillance footage from the Royal Plaza Hotel when she noticed a man in a hotel uniform going up to the 28th floor half an hour before Samantha's estimated time of death. "Show me a list of all the employees who worked that day," she asked the hotel manager. After reviewing the documents, Mindy discovered that no one on the official staff had gone to room 2847. What's more, security had not received any complaints about noise from that room. "We have a problem," she told Captain Stone, showing him the camera printouts. "This man was posing as a hotel employee, but he is not. What do you suggest?" "Open a murder investigation. Officially." Stone studied the materials for a long time. "Okay, but proceed with caution. If we accuse a federal judge of murder, the evidence must be ironclad." Meanwhile, Marcus Reigns was going through the hardest days of his life. His sister's death had robbed him of his last source of stability. He increased his drug intake in an attempt to numb the pain, but this only made things worse. On the day of Samantha's funeral, a stranger approached him. "Mr. Reigns? My name is David Craig. I'm a private investigator. I'd like to talk to you about your sister's death. The police say it was suicide." "Do you believe that?" Marcus shook his head. "Samantha would never kill herself. She was a fighter." "I have information that may interest you. I'm working on a case involving corruption in the judicial system. Your sister isn't the first person who tried to expose Judge Harrison. Craig told Marcus about 3 other cases in the last 2 years. A lawyer, a journalist, and an auditor. All of them had been gathering incriminating evidence on Harrison, and all 3 had died under mysterious circumstances. A car accident, a heart attack, a fall from a roof. "Who hired you?" Marcus asked. "The families of the deceased. They've banded together to find the truth." "What do you need from me?" "Any information your sister gathered. Even small details could help." Marcus remembered the safe deposit box where Samantha kept the original documents. He hadn't told anyone about it, not even the police. Meanwhile, Harrison and Collins met at a country club to discuss the situation. "Detective Mitchell is asking too many questions," Collins said. "What can she find? All the evidence has been destroyed." "Not all of it. There are camera recordings, witnesses, bank documents. If she's persistent enough, then we'll have to do something about her." Collins shook his head. "No. Killing a police officer will attract too much attention. We need to find another way." "What?" "Discredit her, plant drugs in her car, accuse her of corruption, ruin her reputation." But their plans began to unravel when Mindy received unexpected help. Marcus Reigns came into her office carrying a leather briefcase. "Detective, I want to show you something." He emptied the contents of the briefcase onto the table. Hundreds of documents, photographs, audio recordings, all originals that Samantha had hidden in a bank safe deposit box. "Holy God," Mindy whispered as she looked through the materials. "There's enough evidence here to put half the city administration in jail." Samantha collected this for months. She knew she was risking her life. Mindy studied the recordings of phone conversations between Harrison and Collins. In one of them, Collins's voice was clearly audible. "We need to get rid of the source of the problem, permanently. This was recorded the day before your sister died," she said to Marcus. "So you're going to catch them?" "We'll try." But when Mindy tried to get an arrest warrant, the prosecutor refused to sign it. "The evidence was obtained illegally," he explained. "The recordings were made without a court order. They won't hold up in court." "But what about the murder?" "So far, we only have suspicions. We need more solid evidence." Mindy understood that the system was protecting itself. Corruption had penetrated so deeply that even honest officials were afraid to act. So she took a different approach. Mindy contacted Cleveland plain dealer reporter Robert Chase, known for his investigations into corruption. "I have a story that will interest you," she said. Chase studied the documents and records. "This is a scoop, but I need additional confirmation." "What kind?" "A witness, someone involved in the scheme who is willing to testify." Mindy knew that finding such a witness would not be easy. All members of the corruption network were bound by a code of silence. But help came from an unexpected source. The killer who murdered Samantha was arrested on another charge, bank robbery. During a search, a phone was found with messages mentioning Harrison and Collins. Facing life imprisonment, the killer agreed to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. "Yes, I killed Samantha Reigns," he confessed during questioning. "I was hired by Collins on behalf of Harrison. They paid me $150,000. Do you have any proof?" The killer showed her a recording of his conversation with Collins, which he had made for his own safety. The voice of the assistant district attorney giving instructions for the murder could be clearly heard. Now Mindy had all the evidence she needed. The arrests took place simultaneously. Harrison was detained in the courtroom during the hearing. The audience couldn't believe what was happening. A respected judge was being led away in handcuffs in front of television cameras. Collins tried to escape, but was caught at the airport with a fake passport and a ticket to a country without an extradition treaty. Their trial became a sensation. The media called it the trial of the century. The details of the corruption scheme shocked the public. Harrison received a life sentence for organizing the murder and corruption. Collins was sentenced to 30 years in prison as an accomplice to murder. But victory came at a high price. Marcus Reigns couldn't survive the loss of his sister. A month after the trial, he was found dead from a drug overdose. A note was found next to his body. "Samantha, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." Detective Mindy Mitchell was promoted and transferred to the anti-corruption department. But success did not bring her satisfaction. Too many people had died before justice prevailed. Private investigator David Craig continued the investigation and uncovered several more members of the corruption ring. Most of them were sentenced to prison, but some managed to escape. The system had cracked, but it hadn't collapsed completely. Similar schemes continued to operate in other cities and states. Corruption is not a disease that can be cured with a single operation. It is a chronic ailment that requires constant treatment. A year after the trial, Mindy visited the grave of Samantha and Marcus Reigns. The headstone bore a simple inscription. They sought justice. "Justice has prevailed," Mindy whispered as she laid flowers on the grave. But at what cost? The wind scattered the petals across the cemetery, reminding her of the fragility of human life and that there are no easy victories in the fight against evil. Samantha Reigns' story became a warning to future generations. Power without control inevitably corrupts, and silence in the face of injustice makes us accomplices to crime. Cleveland continued to live its life. New judges took the places of the corrupt, new cases came to court, and new crimes were committed on the streets of the big city. But now everyone knew. Justice is possible, even if you have to pay the highest price for it. In the end, it was James Collins who turned out to be the real murderer. Not the one who held the knife, but the one who gave the order to kill. Harrison was a corrupt judge, but it was Collins who decided to turn them from bribe takers into murderers. Justice prevailed, but the scars remained forever.